Today, we're talking about the island of Wormecon, the foodie paradise of Chutasia. Think Michelin stars, but Chutasia style. And at the heart of it all are two incredibly powerful families, the Pommes and the Terres. And they have a dramatic and historic rivalry. We're your hosts, Sarah and Chutney, and you're watching the Chutasian Bulletin, your #1 source for new discoveries from the world of Chutasia. For a long time, the rivalry between the Pommes and the Terres was actually a good thing. It was like a super intense cooking competition. They were constantly pushing each other to make more amazing dishes, making Wormecon famous for its food. But things got complicated when Chutney's great-uncle, King Atalorixus, unified Chutasia. Suddenly, their friendly competition turned into something, well, let's just say, it got a little heated. There have been many attempts to bring these families together through marriages and alliances, but so far, no luck. Imagine if they did unite. The Pomme de Terre family. Now for us Earthlings, that sounds hilariously French. Pomme de terre literally means potato, and given that potatoes are a beloved food staple in Chutasia, that's a wild coincidence. But to a Chutasian, the Pomme de Terre family sounds just as normal as Smith or Jones. Now, before we talk about Chutney's interaction with this feud, we need to talk about soup. Because in Chutasia, it's a very popular dish. It's a national obsession, loved across all of the islands. In fact, the royal family employ a Soupervisor. Yes, that's their title. This hedgehog, the Soupervisor, is responsible for all things soup-related, including the palace's plumbing. You see, the royal palace in Topolis, Jutland, has a soup pipeline. Next to the hot and cold water taps is one for soup. Typically, it pumps potato and leek soup, and naturally, the pipe tends to leak a lot. Maintenance workers under the Soupervisor are continuously working on repairs. It's said that by the time the last section of pipe has been replaced, the oldest part is due repair again. Before the War of the Potato, when the royal family fled the palace, the Queen's personal potato chef, Pierre Noirmoutier Jr., from Wormecon, also held the position of Soupervisor. He was mentioned in the map video where I introduced Chutasia's islands. Interestingly, the soup plumbing also acts as a central heating system, and when they bleed the soup radiators, they collect the soupy steam and sell it as luxury perfume called Chaleur Royale. I'm not kidding. It's made from soup steam. The Countess de Pomme buys 70% of it. She's in a constant perfume bidding war with the Countess de Terre. It was on her way back from one of these perfume auctions that the Countess de Pomme stopped by Mastland, which is where she bumped into Chutney. Chutney had been banished from the palace and was working in Mastland on the island of Hedgehog. Not the most glamorous place. It was the last place that Chutney thought she'd bump into Madame la Comtesse du Pomme herself, who had shown up to inspect supplies for her fancy restaurants. La Comtesse, as you can imagine, wasn't exactly thrilled with the warehouse canteen, also known as the Lift Your Fork restaurant, named for the forklifts used by the workers. She demanded travel linguine pasta. Chutney had no clue what that was. Turns out it's a miniature version of linguine, a tiny delicate pasta perfect for a countess on the go. Naturally, the canteen chef failed to meet her impossibly high standards. In fact, Chutney was surprised that La Comtesse de Pomme didn't request any peaches. Apparently, the de Pommes live in a place called the Peach House on a beach in Wormecon. Chutney always pictured this as a lovely peach-coloured mansion, but there's a rumour that it's actually made of dried peaches, because the workers on the island of Wormecon are more comfortable working with food than they are with construction materials. Now, escaping Mastland wasn't easy, but Chutney managed to save up for a boat ticket. But of course, being a princess, she couldn't use her real name. So in a moment of desperate improvisation, Chutney decided to impersonate La Comtesse du Pomme. Picture this. She walks onto the boat, puts on her most posh voice, and announces,
"Greetings! I am Madame La Compote de Pomme.
Yeah, Compote du Pomme, not Countess du Pomme. Now remember that coincidence of seemingly French words in Chutasia? Well, in introducing herself as Madame la Compote du Pomme, which is nonsense in Chutasia, is amusing to French earthlings, for it sounds like Chutney introduced herself as Mrs. Apple Puree. Chutney. The captain did seem a little taken back, but after a couple demands for travel linguine and with a dismissive wave of her hand, the captain was truly convinced that Chutney was, indeed, a countess. I have to say, these coincidences in Chutasia are a little bit suspicious. For more information about this phenomenon, check out the video linked here or in the description. And that's your Chutasian Bulletin for today. Check out our playlist for more updates. Bye bye!